Welcome to part two of my discussion of Viacom, Paramount, and CBS, and how three companies and two dudes messed up Star Trek for 40 years. When we were talking about how Summer Redstone, whose face I hope to show again in this video, had completed his purchase of Viacom and Paramount, and now we want to talk about the effect on Star Trek before we discuss the succeeding happenings with Viacom, Paramount, and CBS. Okay, so in the original, we have several eras of Trek by this logic. We have the original era Trek, 1966. We have Star Trek, the original series. I'm not going to go into depth on each one of these. I'm just going to show what we have. Star Trek, the animated series in 73. Star Trek, the motion picture in 79. 82 gave us The Wrath of Khan. 84, The Search for Spock. 86, The Voyage Home. 87, Next Generation, Star Trek Next Generation TV show. 89, Star Trek The Final Frontier. 91, The Undiscovered Country. In 1993, Deep Space Nine was released, even though it had been in production for quite a few years. Almost since Star Trek Next Generation came out, Berman and Braga wanted to do a spin-off. So they were developing for quite a few years. And eventually, when they took over Star Trek, they were given Star Trek Control Star Trek from Vladimir, was removed from power basically in the second or third year. Deep Space Nine got a higher priority. Okay, so that's what we call original era, meaning pre-Summer Redstone Star Trek. And honestly, regardless of that, some of this obviously wasn't great. It was all, in my opinion, it was all good. The only arguably bad thing in this whole thing is Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, which is still an enjoyable kind of one-time movie. Watch, I admit I watched, but in light of Star Trek's 7, 8, 9, and 10, in particularly 8, 9, and 10, as well as the recent reboot Trek movies, Star Trek V looks a lot better in the past. So now I'm calling Redstone Era Trek, okay, which was Star Trek Generations, which was horrible. Star Trek Voyager, which was mostly bad with a couple of good parts. I liked that 2 years in Hell, whatever it was, where it was supposed to be a whole season, but they only did one 2-part episode. That was good. I liked the concept of Voyager, which, pursuing the Maquis, getting across the galaxy, having to work together, Anyway, Star Trek First Contact, which was the best of all the films that came out under the Redstone era in 96. Star Trek Insurrection was horrible. I had a great space battle. That space battle in Insurrection itself is worth watching, but the movie was horrible. Then we have the total garbage of Star Trek Enterprise, and not because the actors were decent actors that they tried. When Manny Cotto got it in season 4, it was had some good elements as it started to get back on track. But then they produced this episode called Similitude, which I'll do a whole video on another time, which was the most repugnant thing ever, and it was literally the total opposite of everything Star Trek stood for. And then the last was Star Trek Nemesis, which was just bad. Everyone knows that. And obviously, there's been the more recent Abrams Trek with Star Trek 2009 and Star Trek Into Darkness in 2013, Star Trek Beyond. I know a lot of people will say it's bad, but Star Trek 2009 was a decent movie with flaws. It's memorable to me because it was the last, my uncle who got me into Star Trek, he passed away shortly after this, a year or so, if I remember the timing correctly. 2 years maybe? 3 years. Yeah. He paid 2012, so that's when he passed away. And anyway, and we went to see this movie, and we both enjoyed the experience, and we had its flaws, but we both thought a lot of good things about it. And I'm not going to talk about current Trek, with its problems. This is beyond the scope of this video, and the problems from current Trek, while they arise from this Star Trek, are more expansive than just the Redstone problems. Okay, so now let's go over to one more bit of discussion here. So on our timeline, so after the acquisition of Star Trek, I went over most of this. Summer Redstone purchased, okay, here we go. I will be skipping around a bit here so people understand this. So I mentioned that Summer Redstone had a master plan. Okay, after getting Viacom and then seeing all the assets I had and seeing the way the industry was changing, and I'll point out, remember, Viacom was a split off from CBS. Keep that in mind here. Summer Redstone wanted to have his own television network. Okay, Originally, they made the UPN network, the United Paramount Network, after getting Paramount, which was the fifth network, because Fox had become established as the fourth network. And where are we? And so Summer Redstone was purchased several other companies, like Blockbuster Video and several Aaron Spelling's holdings, if you think of like 9210 and all that. And he had a humongous library of archival content, which means he could just keep broadcasting if you own the network ad infinitum because he owned it. There was no licensing fee. And there's a lot of money to be made in that sort of thing because people watch old TV shows, basically. Okay? So they started the United Paramount Network as the fifth network in, I believe, 1995. And for several years, Star Trek Voyager was created as the flagstone for that. But because of all the mergers and the profits and the growth in his holdings, Redstone could set his eyes on CBS, the bigger prize, because rather than spend 20 years building a network, if you have the money, why not buy one? So Redstone sold off all of his company's broadcast rights, including UPN, their radio network, and also they've done established as a fifth network and fifth distributor. So the feds would not block him, the U.S. federal government would not block him purchasing CBS. So in CBS, they purchased CBS in 1999. Technically, it was a merger with CBS, but really it was National Amusement gaining control of all of the company. So at that point, Viacom 1.0 disappeared forever. Okay, let me. I have another document, I believe, which kind of mentions that. Actually, no. This will be fine. Let's go back to our article up here for a second. No. So at that point, Viacom 1.0 disappeared, and you basically had CBS with Paramount Studios as a name brand for its movies and whatnot. Okay, and things seem like they're going well, except as we know from observing Wall Street and whatnot. The prices, what these companies do, they'll result to stupidity because of their stock prices. I mean, Elon Musk pointed out when he basically deliberately smoked marijuana on TV and watched his price drop, even though nothing changed. For some reason, they thought that was going to be a nightmare. That he smoked a joint on Joe Rogan's podcast. You know, and he's done other than to point the absurdity of stock pricing. So Summer Redstone made some stupid decisions. Because the stock price of National Amusements, which was his family's holding company, was not growing. So in 2005, after a longtime partner of his who had been trying to manage things for him passed away, if I remember correctly, and he noticed there was infighting between one of his employees, who was the chairman of CBS, this guy, Les Moonves. I'll give you a quick show of his face, so we don't have to see him ever again. Okay, and he's the other dude who screwed up Star Trek. I'll get rid of him and go back to our we'll go back to our spreadsheet again. Actually, we'll go back to where we're going to go back. Moonves and Redstone either hated or just didn't care about Star Trek because it was considered second, even though it made profits for them. It was a good marketable IP. They basically let it get destroyed, which I will get to in a moment, okay? And so Moonves and another guy named Tom Freston, who was the chairman of the MTV networks, were fighting. And Redstone had been planning on retiring, and one of those two guys, they were both vying to be a successor because another guy had retired. And he didn't want there to be a fight which would destroy the company because he would still have his film, still have the rest of the National Amusements. And one of them would be the successor of the Viacom CBS conglomerate, which would be their primary source of income. So he decided to, instead of firing one of them, because they were both making him money, to split Paramount, to split them apart again. So CBS and Viacom became two separate companies again with Viacom 2.0. Okay? Here. Okay. I'm going to end part 2, and we'll do a part 3.